Well, my name is Paulino. I am an economist from Cape Verde, a small group of islands in the west coast of Africa. I'm engaged in the consulting industry since the last 13 years. I've been dealing a lot, helping governments and international institutions to design policies and programs across all areas of development, which of course has some linkage with the climate change right now. Presently, I'm holding a PhD in blue economy in University of Cape Coast. My research topic is exactly in the intersection between awareness about climate change and the decision process of investments among investors in the coastal tourism area in small island development states. So this issue of climate change, it's present in my daily life as a professional and of course as a citizen who is mostly interested in this issue. Private sector is an important actor in to deal with this issue of climate change, not only in the area of the drivers of climate change, but also in what concerns to mitigation, to adaptation to the effects of climate change. Of course, we have other important actors. We have the public sector, we have the social civil society organizations, but the private sectors can play and shall play an important role on this. Unfortunately, what we see right now, it's we start to see some signs of engagement of private sector in this issue, but so far it's a little bit timid. We need to move faster on it, and we can analyze this at two levels. First, at the level of exploring opportunities, of designing business models that will help to tackle this issue of climate change. Another level that we need to access this engagement of private sector on this issue is at operational level. At what extent the enterprises operating in Africa are incorporating in their operations, in their procedures, a kind of concerns related to, for example, carbon footprints and so on. And when we look at the picture of the private sector in Africa at these two levels, we need to move a little bit faster, as I said, both in the direction of designing business models to explore also opportunities that are arising from this issue, and at the operational level to adjust the way that that companies are doing business in Africa to reduce or eliminate its carbon footprint. We need to move in these two directions among the private sector here in the continent. At the policies level, there's a growing concern about the climate change that is being incorporated in the design of public policies. Cape Verde submitted already its NDC, for example. Cape Verde signed the most important global conventions related to climate change. We can feel that there's a kind of concerns, global concern about policymakers and the government institutions related to climate change. And this is not innocent. Cape Verde is a highly vulnerable country as a small island development space, especially in what concerns the risk of a sea level rise. But when it comes to the private sector, we don't feel yet that the private sector is navigating this wave. Nor at the level of exploring or designing business model that can help to mitigate the effects of climate change or adapt to the impacts of this climate change, nor at the operational level. This might, of course, a lot of reasons might be contributing to this. For example, the legal and institutional framework, the tax framework, for example, there's no special incentives that could bring the private sector in this direction. At the level of operations, it means in the level of concerns that the private sector are putting in their carbon footprint during their operations is not so tangible that this concern is being incorporated in their operations. I mean, in my view is that we need to move a little bit faster among the private sector in Cape Verde, both in the terms of, I repeat, to explore, to design business model to help on this challenge, and also at the operational level. We need to do more on those two directions in Cape Verde, and I believe in all across Africa. A set of conditions needs to be in place to encourage the engagement of private sector in what concerns not only the mitigation of the climate change and its effect, but also the adaptation to the effects of the climate change. The first condition, it needs to be a shared vision. And when I refer to shared vision, it means shared between the public policies, policy making, between the civil society, between the private sector managers, between the overall population. We need to have a shared vision on this. And for this, we need to be at least the same level of awareness about what is climate change, what is driving to climate change, what might be the impact of climate change, and how climate change is affecting already our life and how it can affect our life in the future. There's a lot of scientific information already available, but we need to do more to make this information reach everybody, reach all the population or these groups that I mentioned before, in order to build up this shared vision. This is, for me, it's the first condition that we need to put in place. The second condition, it's a right set of legal and institutional framework, a right set of policies that will then result in this legal and institutional framework. We need to move better, faster, and in a more efficient way in what concerns to design and implement this legal and institutional framework. Some countries are advancing on this direction, but the idea that I have, it's we need to move a little bit faster on this. The third condition, it's the at the financial side. There's a lot of discussion about the climate financing. The world reached an agreement that the developed countries should contribute with $100 billion per year to help the developing and underdeveloped countries on its efforts. But so far, this money is not, this intention is not materialized. We need to move faster on these two, but there's another level of financing needs that sometimes we are not talking about, and we need to discuss, and we need to design and implement the right set of decision of solutions on this, which means the financing for private investments. The set of financing products that currently is available in the markets, in the financial markets, are not aligned with the specific needs concerning business targeting climate change area, and business investments that will allow the companies to adjust their operational procedures to reduce their carbon footprint. We need to advance too on this way. Make the money available at the global level and adjust the financial products so private sector can take these opportunities and invest in a way that will increase the climate-related resilience. The issue of access to finance needs to be analyzed from two perspectives. Access to finance by enterprise. I'm not talking now about access to finance by countries at the public space. I'm talking about access to finance by entrepreneurs, by businessmen and women, and so on. And we need to analyze this at two perspectives, at supply perspective and at demand perspective. Supply perspective means to try to answer the following questions. Are the existing market solutions, financing solutions that are available to African enterprise adjusted to what it's needed to tackle this issue of the climate change? This is the first question. And in the same perspective of a supply side of this analysis, what is the cost, what is the price that these suppliers, means banking, investors, insurance companies, they are demanding from those companies, and if this price is fair, it's realistic, it's if it's can help on this overall process of accessing financing. The second perspective is from the demand side. And this, the key question is, are the private sector in Africa prepared in terms of business models, in terms of market intelligence, in terms of technical and operational capacity to take opportunity of the available solutions in financing to finance their business. And when we look at these two perspectives, we can identify some issues that we need to tackle. From the supply side, we need to encourage banks, we need to encourage insurance company and other suppliers of financial products to look at the continent geographically, but to look at the climate change in terms of these drivers and in terms of its effect, also as an opportunity, a business opportunity for banks and insurance. This means that those banks, insurance company, and other venture capital funds and so on, they need to look at this climate change issue in a more positive way, and not only in terms of perception of risk that usually they associate to this phenomenon. There's a lot of demand for specific finance to deal with this climate change, and in the future, this demand will for sure will increase, and the banks and the insurance company, venture capital funds, and other operators, they need to design specific products that fit this need. This means in terms of, for example, the interest rate, in terms of disbursement strategy, in terms of payback models, or in terms of how to follow up with the client, how to provide guidance and technical support, and so on. Banks, insurance company, venture capital, and other suppliers of finance needs to work on this direction also in a more positive way. Back to the other perspective of the demand side. And here you have some issues. One of the critical issues to access finance by companies in Africa is collateral. Is this, we had some research in different countries, and the highest complaints by business owners and women and by entrepreneurs, it's sometimes it's difficult for them to present the right set of collaterals that banks demand so they can have access to finance. The second one is interest rates. Interest rates in Africa is very high and non-competitive, and doesn't help private sector to take the opportunities that is arising from the climate change space. In Africa, we are talking about 20%, 15%, 30% of interest rate, and it's very difficult to find out a business model with this level of profitability that will be able to pay back this cost of capital. That's why this is a really important issue that we need to tackle. Let me share an example of Cape Verde. Cape Verde dealt with this in a very interesting way that might be analyzed and perhaps expanded to other African countries. Some years ago, in 1917, around 1917, the government created a combined set of three solutions to tackle those issues that I mentioned. A public institution to provide technical assistance to private sector, another institution to provide collaterals to private sector, and a third institution to provide finance through venture capital participation to private sectors. And this combined approach between technical assistance, between collateral, and between venture capital works very well. And when it comes to the COVID crisis, it helps a lot the private sector to deal with this shock, this external shock that hit the Cape Verdean economy very high. And those three components are operating in a quite integrated way under a same strategic umbrella. And I'm mentioning this here that perhaps can be an interesting case to analyze. And as I said, to apply in other geographies across the continent. Climate change is not anymore some theoretical issue that comes from the scientists and researchers, some crazy guys that appears on TV talking about climate change. No, climate change is real. Climate change is already here. It's affecting people's life, will continue to affect people's life, is affecting business, will continue to affect business. This is real. But we have different ways or complementary ways that we can look at the climate change. A first way is to try to understand its negative impact in our lives and in our business, and this is real. It will have negative impact. But another way is in a positive perspective, how we, the private sector, let me put myself also in this space, how we, the private sectors, including the financiers, including the investors, including the entrepreneurs, including the businesswomen and businessmen, how we can help to tackle the issues of climate change through our business. Which kind of business we can design and operate to help the planet to mitigate the climate change and its effect, and or to help the planet to adapt to the climate change. This is important. We need to look at the market. We need to look at the future demands. We need to look at the solutions that the planet needs to deal with this important challenge, and try to answer this question. How can I design business to help on this process? And a second question, how can I adjust my operational activities right now? How can I adjust my operations during my business to reduce my carbon footprint? How can I look, for example, at the transport system that are serving my business upstream and downstream, and reduce the footprint of my transport system? How can I look to the production side inside my factories and to reduce my carbon footprint? How can I reduce costs while contributing to reduce the drivers of climate change, or helping to adapt the planet to the effect of climate change? This would be my last message, encouraging, I repeat, everybody in the private sector. Let's think about this. Let's put this on this game and cooperate in this global network to tackle this issue of climate change. Private sector, it's part of the solution. Private sector can be, and I'm quite sure want to be, part of the solution. Private sector wants to be a partner. But for this, is very important that the leaders of Africa first understand this potential role of private sector. Second, design more efficient policies to I will say, to support this effort of private sector so they can play this important role. When I'm talking about efficient policies, I'm talking about business environment. I'm talking about legal and institutional framework that needs to be a supporting condition and not a limiting condition for this transition towards less carbon printing business. I'm talking about tax policies. The tax policies needs to be adjusted in somehow to incentivize the private sector towards this direction that I've mentioned before. I'm talking about the general infrastructure. Africa needs to invest a lot in infrastructure to support the role of the private sector in generating economic growth and job creation. And the leaders of Africa needs to have a clear understanding of this and needs to put their hand in a more effective way on this. There's another point that the African leaders can and must play an important role, which is in the regional integration. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, it's one of the most impactful decision that was taken in the last decades in Africa. We are expecting that it will come in force. It will be operationalized as soon as possible, because this will really open the African market in a way that will encourage the private sector to participate in this challenge that I've mentioned before. To my African people, I would like to tell them that as I said at the beginning of this conversation, climate change is already here. It's not something theoretical that happens somewhere. It's happening now. It's affecting our life now in the continent. It's affecting our life and will continue to affect in the future. And my two words on this is we need to look at it in a positive way, how to design and participate and support solutions to mitigate the climate change and its effect, how to design and implement solutions to increase our resilience to climate change, to increase our adaptability capacity to the climate change. Of course, this needs to be a partnership. This needs to be a common dance between joining the civil society, the population, the political leaders, the private sectors, the civil society organization. Everyone needs to work together to discuss and design solutions to increase our resilience to climate change in Africa.